I knew I had just set off a bomb I would never be able to neutralize the instant I said those words. Although my husband's face didn't change. Immediately there was a noticeable difference in his eyes. Flash of something raw, something shattering. Even still I continued to giggle while swirling my drink as like I hadn't just broken everything. I didn't regret saying it since it was the truth. Evelyn is my name. Born and reared in Greenwich, Connecticut. I am 34 years old. To feel alive. I never thought of myself as the kind of woman who required excitement. I was happy with my daily schedule, which included getting up early, going to work, returning home to my spouse, and repeating the process the next day. However, I occasionally let free. When I did, I checked to make sure it was worthwhile. I was hesitant to attend my husband Caleb's best buddy Liam's party because of this loud music, crowds, and finding to like small talk with people I hardly knew were all things I disliked. We hadn't gone out together in a long time though, and Caleb was really thrilled about it. Furthermore, I had to acknowledge that it was difficult to decline Liam's invitations. For months everyone talked about the parties he hosted. Finally, consented after much internal discussion. Just one night, a respite from the routine of our marriage I promised myself would be enjoyable. Was adjusting my clothing, a beautiful emerald green gown that perfectly accentuated my contours while I stood in front of the mirror. In order to feel like more than merely Caleb's wife, I boldly put a hint of crimson lipstick. Caleb approached me from behind and adjusted his sleeve cuff. "You look fantastic," he added in a neutral tone. I looked over at him. "You only have it." I made fun of it. Took me an hour to prepare. A tiny grin pulled at his mouth. "You always look fantastic." Yes, that was a compliment, yet it was lacking in some way. Anything that gave me the impression that he truly meant, such as passion or excitement. Forced a grin on my face while swallowing my despair. All set to go. The location was a chic rooftop lounge with a view of the city's glistening cityscape in downtown Chicago. Enthusiasm struck me as soon as we entered. We were surrounded by the aroma of pricey cologne and champagne. Music throbbed through the air, and laughing and discussion mingled. It was the type of night that temporarily helped you forget your troubles. Liam saw us almost instantly and strode over with his typical assured gait. Everything Caleb wasn't. He was the type of man who could effortlessly hold the attention of a room. He was charismatic and engaging. Look who made the decision to enjoy themselves at last. Liam smiled, gave Caleb a backpack, and then drew me into quick embrace. "You look amazing, Evelyn." I waved him away while laughing. "Being flattering won't help you." Caleb laughed next to me, but I could see that his eyes were not fully smiling. About Liam, he had always felt a little insecure. He never explicitly acknowledged it, but I could see it. When Liam gave me a praise, his jaw clenched, the way that whenever Liam was present he always made sure to stand a bit closer. In a way, I enjoyed that. Brought back memories of the days when Caleb would really stand up for me. Conversations merged, drinks flowed, and I felt alive for the first time in a long time. I laughed, I danced, and I relaxed. Conversely, Caleb mainly remained on the sidelines, sipping his whiskey and observing from a distance. Eventually ended myself at the bar with Liam by my side, pouring me another drink. We discussed everything and nothing, including his most recent business endeavor, a planned trip, and how dull adulthood had become. Then came the turning point in everything. I'm not even sure how the conversation got to that point, but I said it before I could Stop myself. To be honest, Liam, there are moments when I wish I had wed someone like you. It was supposed to be humorous, fun, and light-hearted. However, I realized my error as soon as it was out of my mouth, since Caleb had heard it. At first, I didn't notice him, but as I tilted my head slightly, I noticed the expression on his face. His look was unreadable as he stood a few feet away holding a drink. However, I was acquainted with my spouse, could tell when he was in pain, and it really did cut deep. To his credit, Liam made an effort to diffuse the situation by laughing uncomfortably. "K Mads. Believe someone has consumed a bit too much alcohol." It sounded empty, but I laughed too. As Caleb put down his glass and left without saying anything, my heart raced in my ears. I ought to have pursued him. I ought to have said anything at all. However, I didn't. Chose to stand there and act as though I wasn't actually seeing the disintegration of my marriage. It was a silent journey home, the kind of silence that seemed to separate us like a wall. I shuffled in my chair and gave him quick glances as I waited for him to mention it. He didn't. His jaw was so tightly clenched that I could see the muscles twitching as he just stared at the road. It was oppressively tense. Quiet wasn't the only thing. He seemed to be rehearsing it in his mind, repeatedly, growing more irate each time, as seen by the way his fists clenched the steering wheel and the small shake of his head every few seconds. I let out a loud sigh and reclined in my chair. "Are we really going to do this, for heaven's sake?" Well, response. I was more irritated than guilty when I snapped at Caleb. It was do you really think you'll ignore me about this? Nothing has changed. Right, so what if you wanted to pout like a kid? I took out my phone and pretended not to care as I aimlessly browsed social media. However, the quiet was beginning to get on my nerves. In order to call him out for his absurdity, I wanted him to react, to say anything. Upon arriving home, I trailed him into the bedroom and saw his tense, frustrated movements as he began unbuttoning his shirt and tossed his keys on the nightstand. "Are you genuinely angry over that?" I asked in a light-hearted but disbelieving tone. "You're truly angry?" He ran a hand through his hair and laughed a little, without humor. "Is it a joke?" "Correct. Because it's amusing to claim that you wish you had married my best buddy." Having previously finished this conversation, I rolled my eyes. "Come on. Please avoid being theatrical. The depth wasn't that great." He jerked his head in my direction. "Not so deep. Evelyn, are you even hearing yourself? You expressed a desire to have married someone else directly before me. How humiliating was that? Do you know, before my closest friend?" His eyes blazed with something more sinister than rage, but his speech was composed. "I was hurt. Betrayal." Sneered. "Oh, please. It's not as though I meant it. It was just another of those casual remarks. You act as though I used a megaphone to announce it while standing on a table. It didn't matter." He let out a quick exhale and flexed his. "Oh, it's not nothing, Evelyn. Crucial. It's the unthinking manner you say stuff like that, as if my emotions are unimportant, as though I were merely a stand-in for something better in your life." I flung my fists up. "Look, get started. I said something foolish, and now I'm the villain. Philip, do you ever get over your self-pity?" His gaze grew gloomy. His face was unreadable. "What's humorous? Do you?" I've been telling myself for years that I was being overly sensitive, that I might have been dreaming. But you actually spoke it aloud tonight. Evelyn, that wasn't a slip either. That's what You've been thinking all along. You nearly saw the back of my head when I rolled my eyes so hard. You are such a drama queen, my God. I promise that I wouldn't have even wasted my breath attempting to explain myself if I had known you would react in this way. His displeasure was evident as he shook his head. Don't understand. You don't understand it at. No, I understand perfectly. Lost my temper. I understand your insecurity. And now you're justifying whatever self-pitying trip you're going to embark on with a single insignificant remark. You're trying to find a reason to blame me. Well, Caleb, congrats. Got it. He gave a sour laugh. Oh, don't. You have absolutely no self-awareness. Grinned. Yes, I am really self-conscious. Simply put, I won't gravel because your pride was hurt. Caleb, you're my spouse. Have I not married you? I would have married someone else if I had desired someone. However, I didn't. So don't act like I just admitted to having an affair. At his sides, his hands clenched into fists, not out of rage but out of control. What's the worst thing? No, you didn't even say that. The fact that you stated it shows how little you care. How quickly you dismiss it as if it were any other Tuesday. Evelyn, do you even love me? Or do I only serve as convenience once more? Rolled my Jesus, you're wearing me out. You do. Adore you, Caleb. You know what I don't love, though? This entire act of suffering is me. It's pitiful. In front of the entire party, you're acting as though I cheated on you when all I did was say something in passing. Dealt up. His expression was unreadable as he gazed at me for a considerable amount of Then at last he spoke something. Evelyn, you know what? I believe I just did. He spoke in an uncanny, too calm tone. I would never confess it, but it made me shiver. I sneered. Oh, please. Caleb, stop being so dramatic. I won't use a joke to ask for your forgiveness. Perhaps you're the one who lacks the maturity for this marriage if you can't tolerate a little light-hearted banter. He let out a deep exhale and then nodded, as though he had just decided something. Noted. That was it. Only one word. Noted. Then he stepped out of the bedroom after turning around. Scowled. Where are you heading? Without turning around, he said to sleep. Somewhere else. I guess I've had to mature. I laughed again, but I felt uneasy about something in my gut. Excellent. Allow him to be angry. He would go on. He did he not? He spoke to me very little for the next few. When he did, his answers were brief and truncated, as if uttering each word hurt him physically. The home felt heavier, as if we were both under the weight of an unspoken disagreement. Choose to disregard it. Did he want to pout? All right. I refused to give in to his childish behavior over a little. However, his silence began to irritate me. He would either disappear or act as though he was absorbed in whatever crap was on his phone whenever I entered the room. The worst thing, as if he were a tragic wounded spouse in a melodrama, he was dozing off on the couch like he was the victim in this situation. I just wanted him to move on from it. He sighed theatrically, as if I had destroyed his entire life, and it was tiresome to watch him sulk around. Finally lost it after he arrived home late and hardly gave me a glance for another night. Are you still doing this? Really? He sat at the dining table while I stood in the doorway with my arms crossed. For the length of time, will you pretend that I just ruined our wedding vows in front of you? He let out a loud sigh without raising his gaze. Right now, I don't want to do this. Wish to engage in the passive-aggressive, sulking behavior, though. Is getting old. Newsflash. When he looked at me, I Noticed something in his eyes that nearly caused me to stop for a moment. However, I overcame it. This was something he needed to hear. Behaving as if I had cheated on you. Sneered. At a party, I only cracked just in case you forgot, jokes. Make people laugh. Normal people, you. He gritted his teeth. Are you even interested in my feelings? I gave an eye roll. Please don't do this again. Emotions. Your emotions. Do you ever give mine any thought about how it's exhausting to have to constantly tread carefully because you could lose your heart for nothing? He stopped talking. After that, his face grew stern. Excellent. Perhaps now he would realize what a fool he was being. Instead, he pushed his chair back and got to his feet. At that moment, I became aware of the luggage next to him. Despite my stomach churning, I remained silent. What is this? I asked in a purposefully casual tone. Are we traveling? Since you ought to have informed me, I would have brought a cute item. He let out a slow, deliberate exhalation. I'm going to be gone for a little. My face remained expressionless as my heart pounded against my ribs. Are you serious? Abandoning me because of this, Evelyn? I'm not sure if I can handle this any longer. He spoke less loudly now. Require room. I gave a harsh chuckle. What's the space for? To make me pay for not petting your brittle ego. He gave a headshake. To determine whether it is even worthwhile to save this marriage. Made my blood boil. Give me a break, please. I said something small. That upset you, and now you're having a. The bad news is that marriages aren't always ideal. Individuals make statements. Individuals battle. When things get difficult, you don't just flee like a coward. He gripped the handle of the bag and replied, This isn't about one thing. I've been feeling like I was never good enough for you for years, and I suppose I finally believe now. For a brief moment, my breath. Only a moment. I shrugged after. All right, go ahead and behave like a drama queen if that's what you have to tell yourself. I won't sit here and cry about it, though. He remained silent for a moment, simply picked up his bag and left the room. Told myself that I didn't give a damn. After a few weeks, I convinced myself he would return. He did. It was only a question time. Of course he was upset, but men like him, women like myself, were not abandoned by them. All he had to do was calm down, recognize what he had, and return as usual. That was our marriage's cadence. He would pout, would give him time to think things over, and eventually he would give up, since he couldn't bear to be separated from me. However, things were different this time. In the silence, I sensed it. He wasn't pouting. Unlike when he required my approval to feel like a man. He wasn't pleading for my attention. Don't send frantic sends. No phone calls that are passive-aggressive. Nothing at. I convinced myself that he was attempting to teach me a lesson through game. Acting as though they have control when they actually don't is something that men love to do. He would nap. They break every time. 'Twas me, not him, who set the rules for our marriage. Weeks continued to stretch into months and beyond. Became impatient. He was pushing it, but it was one thing for him to lose his temper and storm out. Finally, I contacted out to remind him who he belonged to and to expedite the process. He replied, but there was a problem. There was no longer any warmth. He added, I'll stop over this weekend to pick up more of my belongings. That was it. Cold detachment alone. With annoyance brewing beneath my skin, I hung up and gazed at the phone. What on earth was this? Where was the constant back and forth, the conflict and the tension? wasn't meant to go like this. He was meant to be lost without me, to miss me. He sounded unconcerned instead. I nearly didn't recognize him when he came. He appeared lighter, stronger, and as though leaving me had somehow improved. That in itself made me furious. He had shed a few pounds and trimmed his beard. I didn't recognize the ease with which he handled himself. The downtrodden man who used to wait for my approval in front of me was nowhere to be found. "Hey," I said as soon as he entered. "Hey," but it wasn't warm. He just too courteous, as if I were a complete stranger. I leaned on the counter and crossed my arms. "Can we have conversation? What about us?" He shook his head and moaned. "Evelyn, there is no." Something twisted inside me for the first time. This was not rage. It wasn't annoyance. I didn't like it because it was something new, fear. I saw him leave through the door. I didn't go after him. I did not yell at him. Why would I for me to grovel or beg? Who was he? In the event that he no longer valued or loved me, our marriage was never intended to be. Weeks passed, followed by months, and I was struck hard by reality. He would not return. His absence seemed oppressive, and the home was filled with an unending silence. His best friend, Liam, shunned me, perhaps out of self-preservation or even remorse. Wasn't even interested in him. That was never the point. The goal was to maintain my husband's insecurity so he would continue to try for me. And I was by myself now. I was prepared when he eventually returned to retrieve the remainder of his belongings. I had persuaded myself that he would remember when he entered and saw me standing there in my silk robe with my hair and makeup immaculate. He would recall how he used to worship me and how I used to make him feel. He would see his own foolishness and exaggeration. However, he ignored me and went directly to the boxes he had left by the door when he entered. He hardly gave me a nod, leaned against the wall and grinned. "Are you really going to behave like this?" He didn't respond. Gave an eye roll. "Come and tell me, what did you practice?" The whole pattern of the quiet, brooding ex-husband. It's pitiful. He finally turned to face me. His eyes weren't as angry as I had anticipated. Just apathy without annoyance, desire, or reluctance. More than anything else. That caused my stomach to turn. "Evelyn, there is no us." I folded my arms. Say that often as if it were significant. With a harsh exhale he took up a box and shook his head. "Do you not understand? You didn't." I mocked him by tilting my head. "Tell me." He put the box down and gave me a very close look, as if he were looking for something that had never been there. "Cherished you. Loved you above all else, God. However, you behaved as though I were merely a pawn in a game you were playing with our marriage. It was control, not love that you sought. You desired victory." Sneered. "You're acting as though I destroyed your life. Please remember how you left." He smiled sorrowfully. And I genuinely feel free for the first time in years. I didn't want to reveal that it hurt. Rather, I chuckled. "Congratulations then. Hope you're enjoying your newfound independence." He refused to fall for the trick. He took another box just now. "By now you should have received the divorce documents in your inbox. Simply sign them and return them." My smile wavered. "Are you truly divorcing me? More than one joke?" He halted and shook his head incredulously. "There was never a single. Oh, as you are aware, that was all." Wanted to argue, to hurl something to disturb that composed look on his face. But I knew in my heart that he was correct. To keep him after me, I had pushed him, put him to the test, and twisted everything. And he was no longer playing. Without saying another thing, he left. I also knew he wouldn't return. This time, I drank for the remainder of the evening. As I stared at my phone, looking through old messages and old pictures, the wine burnt my throat and I waited for a reaction to strike. Anger. Sorry. Sadness, something. But I was just irritated. How could he dare leave like that? How could he not defend me, not beg? Don't you try to disprove me. I had been in charge all along. The conditions of our connection had been set by me. He had always been desperate to please me, predictable and easily manipulated, and he was gone now. And like some destitute wife, I was sitting here by myself signing divorce papers. I wasn't depressed though. Well, I didn't want to be depressed. Felt irritated. He had really followed through, which annoyed me. And offer him annoyed me. I stared at the vacant seat across from me while leaning back in my chair and swirling the wine in my glass. As it happens, certain things are better left unsaid. However, certain things are unavoidable. I was forced to live with